our Friday session of the California Friday morning chats on justice reform. And today we have a great presentation of the three of the people who have worked from the beginning on the New York Commission for Prosecutorial Conduct Review. And we're going to have the three people who were instrumental, three of the many people, but three really important people who were instrumental in setting this up. First of all, we have Bill Bastuk, who is the founder and president of ITCHY, It Could Happen to You. And he is a former legislator from New York, and he has been unjustly tried criminally for rape, and luckily was not convicted because he was not guilty. But plenty of people who go into that situation face a very difficult time. But he knows what could happen to you, and he's here to talk about how this was formed. We also have Jeffrey Deskovic, who is an internationally recognized exoneree. He did 17 years in prison from the age of 16 years in prison from the age of 17 to 32. And he has started the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 13 people and helped pass 6 laws aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. Jeff, after getting out of prison, got a master's degree and a law degree, and is now a practicing attorney working on exonerating others. And thank you, Tiffany, for joining us. Tiffany Garriga, who is a former alderwoman and majority council leader at the City Council of Hudson, New York. So with that, they all have a lot to say and are very knowledgeable about these issues that we're now trying to deal with in California. And so let's get right to the questions. I'll start with you, Bill. You are the head of this organization and know a lot about this topic. And I want to know, what do you think were the key issues in building a commission, building a coalition necessary to pass the bill to create this commission?
So if they would help.
There you go.
Well, thank you for moderating, Cynthia, and Kat Dean, our communications and research director in California and nationally, for putting this together. Jeffrey and Tiffany, who are very close friends and not only political allies, but friends. And we here in ITCHY are a family. So to answer your question, there are 4 things that I think were really important. The first was finding the right bill sponsors to carry the New York State bill to establish the Commission of Prosecutorial Conduct. We wanted to make sure we got somebody who was passionate about the bill and who was respected and ranking within their respective Republican and Democratic conferences. And we did that. We found the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. And on the Assembly side, we found somebody who was very close with the Speaker and had the respect of the Minority Caucus. And by the way, these two, this Republican senator and this Democratic Assembly member, couldn't be farther apart in terms of political philosophies and where they stand on the political spectrum. But on this one bill, on this commission, they both agreed that this was necessary. The second thing we did was we instituted a public education campaign, because the average Joe on the street most of them don't even know what discovery is. And a lot of your representatives have no legal background. They could be car salesmen, beauticians, bankers, insurance agents. So public education and building grassroots support in swing districts in the Senate and the Assembly was critical. And we did that with a broader coalition. And that's the third point. We built a non-traditional coalition in the sense that we extended to labor. We got personalities involved. John Grisham actually wrote an editor to the Wall Street Journal encouraging the governor to sign the bill. So we did public education. We got the right sponsors. We built broad, non-traditional support. The fourth thing we did that was very important was we did the research. We built the case for the commission. We had hard numbers and cases that of some really outrageous cases of prosecutorial misconduct. So we did some solid research, and we used the research to hold press conferences and to educate the key leadership and the legislators. The next thing that we did, by the way, we showed the cost, the fiscal cost of wrongful convictions. And Jeff's going to get into the role of exonerees in a minute. Tiffany's going to talk a little bit more about the grassroots coalition. But one thing that is critically important is when you're starting these campaigns, you've got to make it clear to all those who are going to be involved that we're really the little train that could. We're taking on the most powerful players in the criminal justice system. And in many cases, the district attorneys are the most powerful political players in their own communities. And the mentality and the spirit and the emotion is very important, because you've got to have the endurance of a long distance runner, and prepare those who are working with you that this might not happen in a year, it might not happen in 2 years. This is a run, and as this train goes up the hill, we are picking up passengers all along the way and building more and more support to the point in which there's so much broad support that you can demonstrate to the public and to the legislature that the only people who really oppose this sensible commission on prosecutorial conduct are, in fact, the prosecutors themselves, who would be held accountable. And we'll be taking questions later, so that's all that I got for now.
Well, next, let's ask Tiffany. Can you tell us from your political perspective, what strategies do you think were critical to the bill's passage?
Hi, thank you. Well, from my standpoint, you have to not just convince your council members of the legislation, but you want them to understand people's experiences and why it's so important. Because sometimes when you're just reading it in black and white, you pass it along like, maybe next time, not right now. But the importance of people's experiences is something that not only the public can learn from, but ourselves, on how we need to strengthen the bill, or what needs to be added on and things of that nature. So for me, to get the message to the higher ups, such as the governors, our assembly members, our Senate members, was to show that the city of Hudson, and the first city, in fact, to support the legislation, but the city of Hudson supports this bill because we understand the critical need of people, of understanding that just because that gavel hit and said guilty doesn't necessarily mean that that person is actually guilty when the facts aren't there. And that is what we need to install in our to the public, because we rely so much on the judicial system that when we hear that, oh, well, the judge found them guilty, so they must be guilty. We rely on that, not thinking that that person is not perfect and that person may not be on the people's side as we actually think. And having a commission in place as such will help determine the facts of an individual's case. With finding someone that is guilty, that is actually innocent, not only disrupts the individual's mind, but their families, their friends, the community, the people underneath them that's growing up in the public. If we know this individual's story, and we say, well, if they found this person guilty and we, the public, know that he's not or she's not, how do we convince the higher ups to listen, to pay attention? And when I got involved with the organization, It Can Happen to You, we did events in the communities and also where it hit home in local churches. You know, because when things like this happen, you look for community support, and some of that support comes from our local churches. And we did events and such to let people know and to get involved. And once, you know, the idea to bring it forth to the city council of Hudson, New York, and it was passed, it opened the door for other cities to jump on board and to support it as well, to show the governor this is what is needed.
Thank you. Turning to Jeff, you know, you have been involved with the exonerees for years. How did you encourage exonerees to come back to Albany and walk the halls? And what did you have to do to prepare them for sharing with folks who are going to be very focused on this?
Sure. I want to quickly piggyback off one point that Tiffany made, you know, talking about the ripple effect of wrongful conviction, which of course is, you know, one of the major causes of that is prosecutorial misconduct. I just want to quickly add the public safety aspect to it, in that every time the wrong person's convicted, the actual criminal's free to strike again. That happened in my case. The actual perpetrator killed a second victim. It was a school teacher and had 2 children, just 3.5 years after killing the victim in my case. And not only was I wrongfully convicted, but I want to quickly add that, you know, I lost 7 appeals along the way. It was only when we found additional DNA evidence which identified the perpetrator that I was exonerated. But, you know, that ultimately cost me the 16 years. So in terms of how I convinced the exonerees to keep coming back to Albany, I think first and foremost, it was my example. They knew that I was knee deep in this work, knee deep with Itchy. You know, the foundation is an organization that is in the Itchy Coalition. I'm an advisory board member. So you know, when Tiffany was talking about events, I used to speak at events and let my name be used in media releases and press conferences and strategizing, meeting with the electeds, but then reaching out to the exonerees. But when they saw all that work that I was doing, plus, you know, they know that, you know, I go really hard with my advocacy work and the fact that I started the foundation and that I became a lawyer. So I don't like to say it, it's a little bit weird, but I'm held in high regard in the exoneree community. So when I reach out to them, they're going to take my phone call. And if they don't pick up, they're going to call me back. And it doesn't take that much persuading for me to get them to come there, generally. But sometimes, you know, sometimes they would push back on me in the conference. Come on, Jeff. I mean, this is, you know, the second year, the third year. I mean, this was an 8-year fight, you know. So they got tired at times, and I would have to go out of my way to motivate them, you know, like, you know, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And look, I'm going up with you. Do you need a ride there? Can I pick you up? We'll socialize on the way up. Listen, we'll have dinner elsewhere. Look, did you know that such and such other exoneree that they're going to be there as well. So with all those types of things, I was able to persuade them to do it. And I'll end on this note. I don't want to be long. The beauty of working in coalition is just that. You're working in coalition, you're working with people. Okay. So there were key times. There were a few key moments. I was there for overwhelming majority of things, but there were some key moments, some key press conferences where I simply couldn't go. I simply could not participate because I had a final in law school competing with that. And that was when I got on the phone. I want to particularly recognize Selwyn Days. I want to particularly recognize Anthony DePippo, 2 exonerees that were used to coming to Albany, standing next to me side by side, and I would speak, and then they would feel a little bit emboldened, and then they would add their 2 cents, and, you know, I would share with them what general points were good to make, but never actually telling them what to say, just referencing the points. But I was on the phone with them, and I'm like, listen, I can't make this one. This is a key moment. I next man up. I need you to step up and do the same thing that you used to do with me. I need you to do without my being there. Bill is going to be there. Tiffany's going to be there. Other members of ITCH are going to be there. I got to knock this final out. I'm going to be a more valuable tool, but I need you to go. We can't not have exonerees there. I mean, that's really what drove the campaign is the personal stories and how the stories relate to prosecutorial misconduct and how those injustices would not have happened had there been a commission in place. Because one of the things we hope for with the commission, it's not simply to have a place where victims of prosecutorial misconduct can go to get justice, but the bigger hope, I mean, although that's part of it, but the bigger hope is that it will deter prosecutorial misconduct.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. You know, each of you have had such a great input, leading by example, leading by strategy, and leading by understanding the power of the community and their support. And if you could just both, all three of you, give just brief example of key lessons that you learned in New York that we should keep in mind in trying to create our California commission. That is the next step to understanding what we're trying to get done here. Bill, could you start?
Yes, once again, thank you, Tiffany and Jeff, because those two folks were really, really helpful. And I just want to mention, Tiffany made reference to other city councils. Yes, once the small city of Hudson, New York, passed this resolution, then Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, you had other cities, and Tiffany actually took the city of Hudson resolution and reached out. The other thing that I want to mention that we did, I should have mentioned at the beginning, was that we had some very good, strong poster cases. We had two prosecutors who were outrageous, who did some outrageous things. One hired an ADA who failed the bar exam and allowed them to practice in court. She wrongfully prosecuted a black man and campaigned on the fact that she was going to prosecute this black man in white country, New York. And we had some poster child cases of prosecutorial misconduct. And Jeff made reference to Selwyn Days. And when we circle back, I just want Jeff to hit upon the Selwyn Days case, because it was so atrocious what they tried to do to this man. He would come and speak, and he would bring legislators to tears. But in terms of lessons learned, two things that we learned that were very, very important. One was that sometimes we let the prosecutors get away with misinformation a bit too long and weren't quick enough to respond. And one such example is they claim that these grievance committees up here, who are very similar to the state bar court in the state of California, mostly the state bar, are charged with investigating prosecutorial misconduct. And the DA's Association kept promising the bill sponsors and other legislators a list of those cases that they investigated. This promise for a list started in 2016. To this day, not one name has been produced by the DA's Association in terms of grievance committees. So they got caught lying. Then we exposed their lies. In terms of the context of the bill, two things that we should have included, two or three things that we did not include that we're kind of biting ourselves in the teeth for right now is, and by the way, we have these two issues addressed in the California bill. One is requiring a timeline in which the appointed political officials who are responsible for making the appointments have to appoint those commissioners. And if those commissioners are not appointed within, say, 90 days, which is what we have in the California bill, then the respective leadership in each house will go ahead and make their own appointments. And as an example, you know, some of the leaders really drove their, drove very, very slowly. And I think finally the commission here is going to be up and operating in January. But it took 2 years just to get up and operating because all these officials dragged their butts on making the appointments. The second thing that we're doing that we should have had in the New York bill, that's in the California bill, is a timeline for the commissioners to hire a full-time administrator. And that's another thing that the current commission members who are now in place have taken quite a bit of time to hire. The administrator is the key to the commission. He's the general manager. He or she is the general manager. And so those were two key things that we've added to the bill. And the final thing that we added that Cynthia and Kat worked very hard on is we defined what has to be in the annual report. In the New York law, the commission is required to produce each March an annual report of its findings. But that's all we said. In the California bill, we actually have a detailed list of what's got to be included in that report to make sure that the commission themselves are fully accountable. And we have an audit required from an independent California auditing agency. So those are three big improvements that we've made. We got a tight California bill that in many respects I think is better than the New York bill.
Tiffany?
Well, for me, dealing and working with the public, the bill, it creates accountability and hope. For stories such as Jeffrey, he's been in prison for so many years, but he didn't give up hope. For this bill to have passed in New York, it sends a message out there that with this bill, that individual that disregarded the evidence, disregarded the case, and was only in tune for electoral votes, it creates hope for that individual that the accountability that this bill creates will put possibly that individual on the other side. If for example, if I had to do time for something that I didn't commit because you neglected the evidence, maybe you serve time too. It's called accountability. And no more, I'm cleaning up the streets, vote for me, because what are you actually cleaning? For me, that it's hope for individuals that are in prison. When I became a part of this organization and the interviews that I have done with broken legs and wheelchairs and so forth, I had so many people reach out to me, so many different families reach out to me. Can you visit my family member in prison? They're in there for a case they didn't commit it. We believe in them. We need help. We need to pass this message along. And it's made to the point where I had the entire community of Hudson that participated in the event were all in tears listening to the stories of individuals and their families, that everyone decided we have to get involved because we never know, just like the name of our organization, it can happen to you.
Exactly. Thank you, Tiffany. Jeff, what are some of the lessons learned that you see?
Sure. So I'm going to start off with the prompt that Bill gave me. So in terms of Selwyn Day's case, so Selwyn had an alibi. He was actually in North Carolina at the time the murder happened. And when the prosecution learned of that, they simply changed the time of death to a different day, which had the impact of canceling out his alibi. So I'm going to give a bunch of quick keys, but I'm going to be lawyer-like and be brief. So definitely the exonerees are a key. The real life stories, again, intersecting those with the policy issue doing a little bit of training with the exonerees, because being brief, being concise, being to the point, just hitting the part of your story that intersects with the policy change, how to interact in the meetings with the elected officials. That doesn't go without saying. That's something learned. That's not a natural thing. I think the importance of the role of a summit, when Bill did the First It Could Happen to You summit and reached out to a lot of the different criminal justice reform organizations, regardless of whether or not their focus happened to be wrongful conviction or not, that was a great way just to bring stakeholders to the table and, explain what it is that, we wanted to do. We picked up a lot of support that way. Speaking of which, utilization of pre-existing relationships. So I was able to introduce many people to Bill and to the coalition that had already been familiar with me for many years. And so that was the key. Having non-traditional partners. We had AFL-CIO, there were Steamfitters Hotel and Restaurant, teachers unions. I mean, those are not entities that are typically involved in justice reform work. However, very relevant, because it could happen to you, to any of those members. Certainly doing speaking engagements. Bill and I and some of the exonerees did speaking events up and down New York, particularly in battleground districts, and we picked up some support that way. Having bipartisan support was important, and that was a strategy that we employed, because no matter which political party happened to go in or out of power in any given election cycle, we didn't want our reform to just be dead in the wind, that we didn't want to tie the passage of this crucial legislation to the fortunes of any one particular party. So that was important. Having statement of principles, rather than trying to draft language, if you can instead get set of principles that everybody can agree, everyone can have input on, refine them, and from there, the language in terms of getting legislation, but having principles, free exchange of ideas. So if anyone knows me, they know that and look, I'm a team player, but I'm also independent. I'm going to consider everything said, and I'm going to give you back what I honestly think. It doesn't matter who says what. And we had that free exchange of ideas. And I think that, that was really big, because sometimes an initial idea wasn't what we ended up trying to do. And the goal of this never was ego on any of our parts. It was always, what is the best possible tactic that we can engage in and when? So I think that was really important. And, the last thing is, in terms of meetings with the elected officials, not just the training on the exonerees, but even just the bigger group. Like, we were very intentional. Bill was always going to speak first. Maybe one other person would, then I would speak, and then we would have the exonerees. And so the order, people didn't just haphazardly speak when they felt like it. It was all planned on our part, even who was going to make what points. And then after the meeting, we would walk out and we're heading to the next meeting. Somebody will quickly remind us of the intel. Who is it we're about to see? Are they likely for us or likely against us? Is this someone are they neutral? We would do that, and we would do like a post-meeting op really quick. Look, this went great. Do that again. Listen, not so much this. Don't say that again. Let's say this in a better way. Hey, more of this. So getting better as each meeting went on, I thought was also important.
It's so important that you had a real strategy and a real plan. And I think that when California addresses this, so that we don't have to spend the years that you did there, we can really go much more quickly here. And I think that everything you expressed, in my experience too, having run for district attorney in Yolo County, is that so many people have a story to tell and feel so anonymous, like no one wants to hear it. When I just call voters, they all want to tell you about a friend, a relative, an important family member who is suffering from abuse by the system that was undeserved and unnecessary. And having legislators know how many of those people who are out there really helps with our cause and getting them on our side when they realize that people really care about this issue.
Cynthia, Jeff reminded me of two important things
Great.
that I want to mention. Is that in every meeting that we had with the legislator or with councils in the governor's office or whatever, we always made it a point to have at least one exoneree and one criminal defense lawyer either a public defender or a private sector criminal defense lawyer to address legal questions and to be there to really back up the exonerees in some respect. We always had an itchy board member, and we always had somebody from a wide-ranging community group. Vocal New York, for example, but one or two grassroots groups, and if possible, a family member of an exoneree, especially if we could not get the exoneree there. So thanks for reminding me about that, Jeff. I turned 70, so I forget some of these things now.
And
We
the
have
other
a
thing too
question.
is,
Sorry, if I could just get our question in, because it's been pending a little bit from
Okay.
an audience member. What hurdles do you foresee occurring in California regarding establishing the California Commission, and how can you overcome them here?
well, I think the same arguments that the District Attorney Association of New York trotted out will be regurgitated in one form or another. You know, oh, well, we don't need the oversight. The grievance committee is doing doing just fine. Thank you. It'll have a chilling effect. You know, we want prosecutors to have a free hand in, prosecuting cases, not looking over their shoulder, but all those are, very easily rebutted. But I think those arguments are going to be used. Typically, the district attorney's organization is a very powerful lobby. They have a lot of influence. So, building a lot of grassroots support in public education is the way to counteract that. And I really feel like the last thing is, I really feel like the resolutions that we obtained, which Tiffany got it started on that, and then went around, elected officials to elected official getting resolutions. I think that was really strong as well, because it helped us to illustrate statewide support.
I think you're so right. The getting, as Tiffany said, getting community support and church support. And I want to address that actually myself, having been an attorney for 40 something years and a public defender and statewide mental health general counsel, that what I see with people is that even though they worry about this thing, a lot of people are so worried about their own safety that they think they can't afford to curtail DAs, et cetera. So I think when we point out to them that this actually, as Jeffrey started with in the beginning, limits safety, doesn't grow safety, putting the wrong people in custody, letting people run amok. The more that we're able to demonstrate that we are not after people who are doing their job correctly, we're only after those folks who are abusing the system, who have a ton of power and who have nothing to curtail them. We have no other system. Bill had a great story about his mother-in-law saying, even everybody has somebody looking over what they do, but prosecutors don't. And it doesn't even make sense, even if they only hired exemplary, perfect people. Nobody's perfect. And we don't want people in there who are going to abuse power. And there needs to be some oversight. And that's what I think we have to always lead with, because public is scared. It's scared of crime, scared of criminals, scared of everything. And that's how this has gotten so out of hand.
And just closing statements. Jeff, this is not a trial, so you can be brief. Don't mislead anybody, as prosecutors do in their closing statements. But I just want to say that, in California, we're going to build that robust coalition. We're going to use the experiences. And we certainly don't want this to take 6-7 years. And I don't think it's going to. We've built a lot of political support already for this. And stay tuned for more to come. And my closing statement is always, do what you like what you do. Life is good.
Thank you, Bill. Tiffany, Jeff, either of you?
Well, for me, I just want to say thank you for the interview. And, with this bill, it creates such a hope and accountability, because no one should be excluded from accountability. We're taught as children from our parents, when we do wrong, we are punished. Things are taken away from us. We have to show that we are remorseful, to, be back accepted again. And that we grow up with that. So where along the lines where you become an elected official by the public, where you decide yourself, accountability ends with you. You are our public leaders. And if we, the public, have to be accountable, our leaders, particularly, especially, need to be accountable. Lead by example. That's what our leaders should do.
So I want to just share that engaging in advocacy work, it's meaningful, it's healing, it's cathartic, it makes your suffering count for something. So I get quite a lot out of engaging in advocacy, particularly, this campaign in New York and what we're doing in California. So I would encourage other people who may be watching this to think about getting involved, because it can work that way for you as well. Again, utilization of people, advocates and organizations with pre-existing relationships, bringing them together, working together, in coalition, utilizing the resources that you have. I mean, it did cost money to, be involved in the in the campaign, and contributing whatever one can, by way of money, but also by way of time. And lastly, I'll end on, the prosecutorial misconduct that my prosecutor engaged in, which had the impact of sending me away to prison for 16 years from age 17 to 32, was that one day before officially getting the DNA test results from the FBI lab, which excluded me, he ran to the grand jury to indict me, so that way he didn't have to present that evidence. And secondly, the medical examiner who had altered his findings to help the prosecution fight the DNA exclusion, he had been complained of by authorities in neighboring counties where he was moonlighting as a defense expert, helping people get away with crimes. They never turned over any of those complaints. So it happened to me, and it could happen to you.
Thank you so
And-
much.
And if you want to learn more about It Could Happen to You, please go to the It Could Happen numeral2.org website. And there's 3 videos on there from California. Well, 2 videos from California exonerees, and a video from a defense lawyer who was involved in trying to bring a California DA to justice, and all the hills and railroading that she encountered. So It Could Happen, number 2u.org. There's a donate button. It's the end of the year. California is a big state. It's very expensive to do anything in California, but this commission will save California taxpayers money. So since we're on the subject of
A lot of money. It's not small money. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. And also, I just want to put one plug in, is that Bill has gathered a huge, not a huge, but a large group of people, very able people, who are all working for free on this. So the very few expenses that they need are really important. So Bill, he's the one who keeps us all going. Thank you so much, each of you.
Oh.
Your perspectives are different and inclusive and wonderful. Thank you. It's been very, very good forum. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're off the air. That was fabulous. I think